Hello, internet friends and family. Welcome back to Starkey Farmstead. Hey guys, so I titled this video, The Silent Depression That is Destroying Middle Class America and Europe. The videos that I've compiled for you are mind blowing, and you simply cannot ignore the evidence that is facing middle class America and Europe, Australia, New Zealand, wherever you happen to be watching from. Our middle class populations are being destroyed. One of the most terrifying things I think I've ever heard is when the World Economic Forum is discussing how they are going to abolish, being poor. Like nobody's going to be in poverty anymore. We're going to get rid of that. Well, that begs to differ. Exactly how are you going to get rid of poor? Because in the Bible, Jesus says the poor are always going to be with you. So right there, it's antichrist system, 100%. But they're like, we're going to get rid of, this poverty level. And I honestly believe in my heart, the way that they're going to do that, folks, is by destroying the middle class. See, rather than raising up wages in Africa, they're simply going to lower them in America. Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me. A lot of us are preparing for an Arctic freeze here in the South that we are not accustomed to, and it is a bit much. But let's go ahead and jump right into this because I know my husband would like to be able to watch TV in the living room and not be stuck in the bedroom. So I'm going to go pretty quick with this, you guys.
Living in the silent depression, and I'm going to explain what I mean. During the Great Depression, 48% of people ages 25 to 29 lived at home with their parents. Nowadays, it's over 52%. If you take the worst year of the Great Depression in the 1930s specifically, they made about $88,000 a year adjusted for inflation on average. One person, not a household, one person. Today, that's in between about $35,000 and $45,000 per head wherever you look across the country. New cars are unaffordable. New houses are unaffordable. To move to a new place and rent somewhere else is unaffordable. It's terrible what's going on right now. And to cap all of this off, I don't think anyone, for the most part, is really thinking about the fact that in 2020, 45% of the market just came crashing down in 1 month. There was a 45% drop in 1 month, the quickest fall that we've ever seen in United States history. And then it went back up and people have stopped thinking about it. Well, I'll tell you, I haven't. I think something big may be on the horizon because normal people in this country are fucking struggling. And at the end of the day, normal people are what this country's backbone is built out of. If you crush the back, the country's back will be broken and the rest of the body will be functionally useless. We are living in...
Let me tell you why this really struck a chord with me. I have 4 children between the ages of 19 and 27. And when I look at my 4 young adults, I realize that if I don't step in and buy that first used car for them, they won't have a vehicle. If I don't step in and send them money every month while they're in college, they don't have any food to eat. That if they aren't living in apartments or communal living areas, they can't afford rent away from mom's home. So I keep a middle room ready at all times for any one of those 4 to call and say, Mom, I need to move back home. I don't have bad kids. My kids aren't out drugging and sleeping around and partying. I have kids that are in the military, that are in college, that are traveling the world, and they're struggling. So if it's happening to me and mine, it must be happening to other people because, see, I tend to be pretty good at seeing it through other people's eyes. And I'm this concerned about my children. I'm going to feel that way for you and yours. I know that my 80-year-old parents have systematically had to allow grandchildren and adult children to move home and help us all out in the past 30 years because the economy is steadily getting worse, but nobody's talking about it. They act like we don't know what we're talking about. This is what we hear from Biden.
You never had to worry about whether the
Hold on, it's going to come back on.
She said she had the votes. With Nancy leading the way, you never had to worry about whether the bill would pass. She said she had the votes. She had the votes every time. She had to vote so many life-changing pieces of legislation. She helped rescue the economy in the Great Depression. Nancy leading the way. You never had
He's talking about Nancy Pelosi saving the economy during the Great Depression. The woman wasn't even born until the 1940s. This is what we have had at the helm of our country for the past 4 years. He doesn't even know when the Great Depression was or who was actually alive during it. But I'll tell you what Trump said, and this is what made me pause and do this video.
We're probably heading into a Great Depression, something I've never said before publicly. I'm saying it in your state. I hate to say that this is the state I have to say it, but I don't believe I've ever said that before. It's a hell of a statement to make, and I hate to make it. The only question is whether or not it'll be during the remaining months of the Biden administration. If it's going to happen, let it happen then. If it's going to happen, let it be during Joe, and we'll come in and we'll straighten this sucker out. I'd rather have it.
And I do believe Trump will straighten it out. Some of the things he's talked about doing to help the average person, you and I, is abolishing taxes. Like basically saying there'll be no more taxes, income taxes, and we're going to raise tariffs. A lot of people are having a fit about the tariffs, but folks, the middle class started carrying the burden when we quit charging people for sending their products to our country. All right. So it's either you're going to pay taxes and support the world, or you're going to pay tariffs to bring your goods into this country. At some point, you've got to relieve some of the stress on American citizens. Listen to this young lady. This was very interesting.
Is considered a flawed democracy with a failing economy, and that's according to the Economist Democracy Index, which is the authority on ranking the 167 democratic countries. In July of 2022, our rating dropped to 41st, down from its position of 32nd, and we are now ranked between Cuba and Bulgaria. And for the know-it-alls that are going to be like, well, that's a second world country. Okay, MIT Economics did a study, and their study found that over 80% of Americans are living in third world conditions. And their study found, and I quote, "The United States of America has regressed materially to a third world nation for most of its citizens. We are, in fact, living in a third world country." Is considered a flaw.
So somebody said tariffs are going to make stuff more expensive for all sides. Let me tell you what tariffs are actually going to do. They're going to abolish the income tax. And for the ones of us who at the end of the year are looking around for $4,000 to pay an income tax, I'm thankful for it. Second, it's going to be tough for a year or two until more people begin to produce again in America good quality products. You're paying a tremendous amount of money for cheap Chinese slave labor, child labor produced products. You're just going to have to get used to paying for good quality stuff and stop purchasing cheap products. Yeah, be nice so the middle class doesn't do that. Now, I saw this guy and I thought it was very interesting what he had to say.
Great Depression to today. We are in a silent depression. When you compare the Great Depression to today, this is going to absolutely blow your mind. In 1930, during the Great Depression, the average home in America was $3,900. The average car was $600, and the average monthly rent was $18 or $216 a year, and the average salary was $1,300 for the year. Fast forward to today, it is $436,000 for the average home, $48,000 for the average car, and the average rent is $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year. And we have a $56,000 income for the average American right now. So if you look back to the Great Depression, the house was only 3 times the average salary. Now it is 8 times the average salary. The car was 46% of the salary. The car today is 85% of the salary. And here's the craziest part. The rent was 16% of the average salary. It is now 42% of the average salary. We are in a silent depression. When you compare the Great...
You can't argue with the facts.
He sent me a TikTok where this guy actually goes into why today is just economically as bad as it was in the Great Depression.
What I'm about to show you is not because I want to hurt people.
much. The Great Depression is widely considered, at least where I went to school, as the worst economic time in American history. Absolutely. I want to show you the numbers on what the average income was during the Great Depression to now. So 1930, the average net yearly income of Americans, this is for one American, not a family, this is for one person, annually was $4,887. Now, of course, back then, things were different. We had inflation. So what does that equal today? Well, let's look at how much money that is in today's money. I'm just going to let this sit for a second. 1930, $4,881. I know I forgot it was a 7, whatever. 2023. This is for one person, not a family.
$88,000.
$88,000 a year in today's money.
Per person. $88,000 per person. Then this guy continues and he's like, but you know, the average American is probably making between 40 and 60 grand a year. If any of you watching me right now, if one person in your family brings in between 40 and 60,000 a year, throw the little hand up over here in chat. Or if you watch this after it's off, give me like a thumbs up, because I don't think most people are really thinking about this. Most people together in America, the median family income in America right now is like 40 grand. And you're paying taxes on that. You're paying insurance on that. You're paying mortgages, car notes, daycare, food. This is why America has so many people in debt. I showed y'all a video the other day and I told you guys, thank you so much for the thumbs and stuff over here, guys. I told you guys the other day that it comes down to, when you're looking at stuff, that America is not in a good position financially. We're not a capitalist system anymore. We are a debtism. That is what it's called. It's called debtism. Our entire country is run off the amount of debt versus how much we bring in, you guys. And a lot of people are saying, yeah, you know, I'm making like 40 grand, but I still can't make it. And that's the reality. Why? If our country's so great, if our economy's so stable, why can't people make it on 40, 50, 60,000 per person? And I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you this. I feel like they have been destroying our economy for so long. They're raising the debt ceiling to a point that America's never going to pay it off. So if we don't pay our debt off, what happens? Are they coming to take our lands? Like, we really need to talk about this, because I was looking at the Great Depression the other day, you guys, and I was like, a lot of people don't know this. My husband didn't know this. Let me read something for you guys. I wish my dog would hush, but he just got back from training. And so anything that moves, he's like, woof, 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 woof. Like, you know, he thinks he's something. During the Great Depression, Dust Bowl era, the creation of the Soil Conservation Service began. And their entirety of what they were band together to do was run electricity, build sanitary bathrooms in rural America, and establish a system of farm credit. Here we go. They created something called the Agriculture Adjustment Act, AAA, of 1933. And it was very controversial. Excuse me. Okay, so what they basically did, they found that the net income of farm operators in 1932 was less than 1/3 of what it had been in 1929. Farm prices fell more than 50%. Thus, for a decade, farmers were caught in a serious squeeze between the prices they received and the prices they had to pay. Okay, so what did the government do? The government created something. The act established the Agricultural Adjustment Administration under the leadership of Secretary of Agriculture Henry Wallace to implement a domestic allotment plan that would give money to producers of basic agricultural commodities who were willing to reduce their acreage of certain crops and reduce livestock numbers. Hear what I told you. They were paying the farmers to roll the food back in the ground and all the livestock. Okay? During the Great Depression, people were starving on America's streets, and our government was paying the farmers to get rid of livestock and get rid of the food. And this is what they sent out. America has plenty of food for everyone. It was called the Agricultural Adjustment Administration. So, which agricultural commodities needed to be balanced? Wheat, cotton, field corn, hogs, rice, tobacco, and milk. Then its products were designated as basic commodities in the original legislation. Subsequent amendments in 1934 and 1935 expanded the list of basic commodities to include rye, flax, barley, grain, sugar gum, cattle, peanuts, sugar beet, sugar cane, and potatoes. So, participation in the program was voluntary, and farmers were paid for pigs that were killed. Most of the hogs killed were sent to packaging plants that contracted with the government. Some 5 million light hogs, averaging 53 pounds or less, were simply tanked or processed into inedible meat and bone meal. Sows, which were required to be visibly pregnant for acceptance into the program, were processed into meat that was donated to the Red Cross. Historical records show that 6.4 million pigs and sows were killed. Now, let me get to it. A similar cattle purchasing program was also implemented in Oklahoma. So, in addition to killing pigs, cattle were also killed. In Nebraska, the government bought about 470,000 heads of cattle and 438,000 pigs. In the South, 1 million farmers were paid to plow under 10.4 million acres. Thank you, Ms. Backstrom, for joining as a member. We appreciate the support. Welcome to the family. The hogs and cattle were simply killed. They weren't given to the starving masses of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, folks. They just killed them. It was a bitter pill for farmers to swallow. They had worked hard to raise these crops and livestock, and they absolutely hated to see them killed and the meat go to waste. So why am I telling you this? Because they started that during COVID. If you knew anybody or watched anybody that was homesteading or farming channels, they began to get rid of livestock and crops. They did it in Europe. They did it in America. Yet you had people going homeless. Now, I'm going to show you one more quick video of a young woman.
Back then, we had a lot of sheep. The sheep that we were given from the government after the long walk. And
she's Native American.
To the reservation that we have now. So our flock actually grew and grew, and we were doing pretty good. And then the Great Depression happened, and in 1933, which was the height of the Great Depression, they actually started recommending natives sell their livestock to the government. And that was because of erosion or something. And they said it could have been like the Dust Bowl or whatever. But they wanted us to sell our livestock. And I believe it's because of the Great Depression. And they were probably just selling them for cents on a dollar, or, the government. Well, anyway, in 1935, they actually started making it a mandatory requirement for people to reduce their livestocks, like way, way down. And people actually referred to this as the second long walk because of how gruesome and forced it was. Because there actually were government officials that came and would just slaughter their livestock right there, right in front of them without their consent or anything. Even the government did not consent. Our own Navajo government did not consent to this, but it was forced anyway. And I mean, they mention a lot of it, like the tariffs and World War II and other things to be like contributing to helping the U.S. out of the Great Depression. But I believe that the natives actually did help as well because of our food source, our livestock.
I had to share that. When I tripped across that video, I said, oh my gosh, she doesn't know about the AAA that I was just reading to you guys. Like, she does not know that all of this was intentional. It was called the Agricultural Adjustment Administration. And God bless you so much for the $10 super chat. We appreciate you supporting us. I know that North Carolina has been devastated, and having you guys support our channel means so much to me. Thank you. But that's right, Miss Debbie. A lot of people on Social Security and disability insurance, guys, they're not even close to making a minimum wage and having to survive. So I want you to think about that. When you're seeing them start talking about paying farmers to roll crops under or to unalive livestock without any use of that food, we have a problem. They did it in the Great Depression. And I honestly believe in my heart, America is worse off than she has ever been. This one guy I was showing you guys earlier. Watch this. He really kind of got on my nerves with this. Watch what he says.
Equivalent to $24,912 today. And I would beg to think that most people are going to make more than $24,000 a year. Now, if you're just getting started off in your career, of course, you're going to make a lower amount of money. But with $15 as kind of the standard starting wage in America for most jobs, you're making more than they made back in 1930. So what's the average today in 2023? Well, according to ZipRecruiter, the average in 2023 as of June is $58,563 a year. So we're making a lot more than they did if you compare apples to apples, truly from an average perspective. But is it actually still that bad? Do we need to be worried? Are we struggling? Well, there's a lot more that you need to consider. Let's get down to brass tacks. And that is the fact that in 1930, let's be honest, at least last time I checked, things don't look as nice, right? So you don't have all the modern conveniences. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have TVs and streaming and all these different things. They were luxuries, let alone the fact of the iPhone. Come on. Or even if are you an Android person? I don't know. Leave me a comment down below. I mean, we barely had phones in the 30s, right? I think we might have, but they didn't cost what they cost today. So to actually look at it from that perspective, what we'd have to do is really look at, we have much more in front of us today. We have a lot more temptations. You can upgrade your iPhone every year.
So I'm not sure how he thought that what he was saying is that we're better off now than the Great Depression because things look better. Have any of you traveled lately? Because I just came back from Seattle. I just came back from Miami and Tampa. And I told you guys, I felt like that I was a foreigner in my own country. These cities look horrific. There's trash everywhere. I mean, it is horrible. Public transportation isn't safe. And no, everybody isn't making $15 across America. And for some people, that's actually a living wage. So it must be really nice to sit in that glass palace and look down on us people down here who, if as a couple make more than 50 grand in a year, it's like, yeah, we not poor no more. You know what I'm saying? Am I the only person that feels like I live in reality and the rest of the world has just flipping lost their minds? Because, yeah, I've got an iPhone. What has that got to do with the fact that America's basically in a depression? Is he saying that if we didn't that, and then he said, we have the internet. What does that got to do with how much money we make? You know what I'm saying? You are so right, Jay. The younger generation is in despair. They don't have any hope. How are they going to buy a house? I just left my daughter to finish up school in another state. And I bought her a used car, paid for it, put it in her name and said, baby, that's all mama can do for you. I got you up here. I got you a used car so you're not having to use public transportation as a young white woman. Even if she wasn't white, it still wouldn't be safe for her. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Quick Quid. God bless you for the super chat. And I'm like, we love you. We're here for you. But she's like, Mom, when I get out of school, I'm going to be in so much debt. It's going to take me like 20 years to pay it back. And I'm like, look, baby, I'll do whatever I can to help you. I will help you pay your student loans. My parents did that for me. But you guys, our children are looking at $400,000 to buy a house. No, I'm not playing.
This guy believes we are not just living in worse than the Great Depression, we're living in the silent depression. The average annual income in 1930 for an American individual was a little over $4,800. Sounds like nothing, but if you adjust that for inflation, a little over $4,800 a year in 1930 is equivalent to almost $85,000 annually for the average salary for one person. Right now, the average annual salary is $56,000 a year. We currently are making less than the height of the Great Depression. In 1930, gas was on average 10 cents a gallon. That would be about $1.73. In case you haven't filled up your car lately, average cost of a gallon of gas is $3.55. To buy a new car in 1930 would have been about $860. It's worth about 15 grand. The average cost of a new car today is $48,000. And of course, the most coveted aspect of the American dream, being able to buy a house in 1930, cost about $3,900, less than $70,000. I spend way too much time on Zillow, so maybe this isn't surprising to me, but the average price of a home in America today is $416,000. How could we be living through worse cost of living and wages than 1930? And no politician, no media outlet, no one is talking about it.
That's Bidenomics. It's about growing an economy by strengthening the middle class.
I heard a term.
Strengthening the middle class. We've abolished it. Guys, I grew up, my dad owned a company, worked in chemical plants. We grew up, I remember traveling as a child. And when Steve and I first got clean and sober, I mean, we couldn't even pay our electric bill. I'm not going to lie to you guys. God really did a work with us. But we have worked so hard to get where we are. And I don't travel for fun, just to tell you guys that. One day I will. And I will not apologize for it because I work hard and I tithe. But we travel because our children live out of state, whether it's for military or school or work, whatever the reason. My children are not with me this close to me right now. And trust me, this mama's going where her babies are. But I just wanted to share this with you guys. Now, I want to tell you, if you're looking to be able to feed you and your family in what may be coming as a really, really bad, depression again, I want to show you guys something about rabbits. Oh, thank you, Purple Turtle. It's all God.
More reasons why you might want to raise rabbits on your homestead, except I'm giving you a bonus right here at the beginning. Rabbits are one of the few livestock animals for which you can forage their food if you ever needed to. I know several people who survived the Great Depression thanks to the chickens and rabbits that they foraged the food for. If the feed store runs out or you're in a tight financial situation, you can gather the food for your animals on your own. That would become increasingly more difficult as you go up in size on your livestock animals. I really don't know if that would be feasible for something like sheep, pigs, or cattle.
Thank Joan. Thank you.
It's great to have that option if you ever needed it. Number 5, rabbits produce high quality meat. Before I continue with this, I want to address a few things from the last video. It is completely okay if you don't want to eat rabbit meat. It is okay if you don't want to butcher your own rabbits. There are services for that. Or if it upsets you that a lot of animals have to die for you, buy you a bison. There are lockers all across the US that offer bison as an option, and that could be a good alternative for you. You can also buy quarters or halves or sometimes even 16ths depending on your butcher. It takes 3 pounds of feed to gain 1 pound for a rabbit. Meanwhile, it takes cattle 6 pounds and bison 12 pounds to each gain 1 pound of weight. So rabbits are really efficient. Also, I found it really weird that the people who were warning me about protein poisoning are literally gym bros who are consuming protein by the powder. I've been weightlifting for over a year and I haven't used any powder. Yes, rabbits are super high in protein, but as long as you are eating other foods with fat in them, you're going to be just fine. Also, 1 buck and 2 does
do
produce
taste
up to
good.
600 pounds of meat in 1 year thanks to their 30-day pregnancy and fast-growing babies. Just for reference, a 1,000-pound cow is going to give you about 630 pounds of meat. Number 6, rabbits can give you high-quality pelts and leather. And you can postpone this as long as you need to. When you butcher your animal, just roll the hide up and put it in your freezer and take it out when you're ready. For me, this makes a wonderful thing to do in the middle of winter when I am stuck with 3 feet of snow. Tanning, leatherworking, tooling, and sewing are great skills to have. You can get into several hobbies and make amazing things for your homestead on the cheap while being sustainable. Faux leather and faux fur totally have a purpose, but they are not nearly as long-lasting or durable as the real deal. And at the end of the day, the faux stuff is plastic.
It
If
is
you're a
plastic.
homesteader, you're probably a little more conscious about that and you might want to move away from it. Plus, whatever you craft, you might be able to pass on to children and grandchildren. Number 7, rabbits are great weed removers. Rabbits can greatly reduce the amount of unwanted herbaceous perennials on your property, aka weeds. And I don't know about you, but it's a great incentive for me to stay on top of the weed pulling. If I'm just pulling the weeds for the sake of it, I'm not having a good time. But if I'm going to go feed them to my bunnies and listen to them chomp on it, I'm happy as can be. I am especially proud of my rabbits when they eat those ouchy Canadian thistles that pop up all over.
And I will tell you guys this, Stephen and I offer a class every single spring on our property. It's called Birth the Butcher. And Stephen, I teach people everything there is about breeding and birth and illnesses and how to naturally feed their rabbits. And Stephen teaches people how to humanely slaughter them. Yeah, because we have to get these skills back. I'm a homesteader at heart. I am not going to starve. I told you guys that. Sam's not going to starve. I raise chickens and rabbits to feed my dogs and to feed myself. I pray that over time, you too will learn some of these skills that we have, because I'm going to show you one more quick video and then I'm going to go so that my husband can enjoy his evening before he goes to work in the very, very cold. But I agree, Jay, I totally agree. College is overrated, but there are some things that you still have to go to college for. And folks, let's just be very honest. My daughters are very feminine. They were raised to be young ladies. They are not masculine in any way. They have very strong fathers and very strong grandfather, and they have very strong manly brothers. So my daughters went to use their brains, not their bodies. Both my sons are very smart. They both are trained in multiple things, but they're using their bodies more than their brains. It's not always that way for girls. Sometimes if you want your daughter to be able to take care of herself, if something happens to her and dad's not around, her brother's not around, she doesn't have a husband, she needs a college education. And that's just the truth of it, folks.
Better way of managing a national economy. No one knew then that in the early 1920s, after World War I, the German mark would be inflated so much that it was cheaper to put bills on the wall than buying wallpaper. President William Howard Taft kept the Federal Reserve Bill from becoming law. But in 1912, Teddy Roosevelt's ego got the better of him, and he decided to run against Taft, his hand-picked successor. Roosevelt's daughter once said her dad wanted to be the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral. Certainly, he missed being president. Taft and TR split the Republican vote and let Woodrow Wilson win the presidency. Wilson, a one-worlder who viewed the Constitution as just a bunch of suggestions, pushed through the Federal Reserve Bill in 1913, the same year he got the first personal income tax passed. The Federal Reserve was made up of 12 member banks spread around the country, put there for political reasons, and despite its name, it was not a government entity. The need for a crucial vote from a Missouri senator in 1913 led to not one, but 2 of the 12 banks being put in Missouri, in Kansas City, and St. Louis. The presidents of these banks and other political appointees would make up the Fed's Board of Governors. From the start, the Fed was a political operation, doing whatever the party in charge of Washington wanted. Americans of that day were rightfully concerned about the federal government being able to make money out of nothing. Since until then, $20 had been worth an ounce of solid gold for
Not
decades.
anymore.
As economist Thomas Woodward noted in a book on the Fed in 1996, people often ask what backs the paper currency the Fed turns out.
Nothing.
The short answer, he wrote, is nothing. There are no real assets, public or private, that are specifically pledged to collateralize or back the debt of the government. This means that ultimately nothing backs the money. And Americans have found that out, much to their dismay. The modern Federal Reserve note dollar is worth less than 2% of what the dollar was 100 years ago, and gold hasn't backed our currency for nearly half a century. But in 1913, we were assured by politicians that the value of the dollar would not change, and even better, the Fed would make sure there would never be another financial panic, as this New York Times article stated. In fact, we didn't have any more panics, but only because they changed the names. When a panic worse than any previous panic struck in 1929, President Herbert Hoover dubbed it a depression, then a milder term than panic. Of course, the Fed never learned its lesson. In 1934, new President Franklin Roosevelt pegged the cost of gold at $35 an ounce, a 41% drop in the value of the dollar stolen from the public overnight.
Overnight.
He also made it illegal to own gold coins or bullion and confiscated $2 billion worth of other people's money to help stabilize the economy. There's a good case to be made that the Fed itself caused the Great Depression by manipulating credit. During the First World War, the government demanded that...
So I hope that you really listened to that. Not only has our government in the past demanded that the Native Americans on their property kill their livestock or sell it to the government, paid farmers to destroy crops and livestock when Americans were starving, demanded and made it illegal for you to have actual money, which is gold and or silver. All of that has happened in the past. And what have we learned? There is nothing new under the sun. And that history does what?
Repeat itself.
Thank you, Stephen. It repeats itself. So folks, you better wake up. You better tighten those hatches. Pray over your finances. It is okay to ask God to bless the works of your hand. Walk around your house. Speak Deuteronomy 28 out loud. I will be blessed in the city and blessed in the field. I'm blessed when I go out and I'm blessed when I come in. It's okay, because let me tell you, it's going to get tight. Yeah, you're right, Miss Joan. He wants my attention. Miss Joan wrote, honey wants his sugar before he goes to work. All right, guys. It's cold. I love y'all so much. Be blessed. Be prepared. I will try to put up videos and go live, but the internet and the connections are already becoming unstable with this Arctic freeze moving in. So you guys just lift this up. The banks are closed tomorrow. None of our money is coming through. So I told my husband, I said, here's the last little bit of cash, last little bit of money we have. Go to the store and get a little bit of food. Let's cook it all up and get prepared. So you guys just pray over it.
I cooked a big pot of chili to keep myself warm, and she might have a little gassy with her.
Yeah, I think, he sleeps with a CPAP on, so he doesn't have to smell it. But you know how that is. I love you guys so much. Be blessed. Be prepared. And just know it's okay to ask God to bless the works of your hand. Love you guys. You're funny.